Warning, this episode contains graphic content that may be disturbing for some of our listeners.
And now he's failed the polygraph examination.
And
again,
you have Sue, already casting doubt from that first day.
Absolutely.
And you have neighbors punching holes in his story. So it looks like you're starting to put part of this puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's becoming clearer.
Tolstoy wrote that happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. I'm Clark Donley, along with Jessie Hemmelgarn and retired FBI Special Agent Harry Trombitas. Welcome back, Harry. This unhappy family that you encountered back in the 90s, it was a very unhappy family in its own way, indeed. How did you get involved in the missing person's case involving India and Cody Smith?
Yeah, it was quite a case. You're right about the family issues and things. This is certainly an indication of one family that had some issues, and that it unfortunately led to the death of two young children. And it started on Wednesday, July 9th of 97. Around 1:52 p.m., the Champaign County Sheriff's Office, that's in Urbana, Ohio, received a call from an individual by the name of Kevin Neal, who indicated that his two stepchildren, India Smith, who was 11 years old at the time, and Cody Smith, age 5, had been outside playing, and around 1:30 in the afternoon, Kevin Neal, realized that the children were missing, and he said he went all over the property. Now, in this particular house, it was kind of a farmhouse out in a somewhat rural area. It wasn't a neighborhood. It did have houses and things around, but they were, acres apart. So it wasn't like being in the city. And Kevin Neal said that when he realized that the children were missing, he went outside. He searched everywhere. This particular property has some outbuildings, a silo, and a couple of other buildings on the property. And he went and checked those. He said he was yelling, India, Cody, where are you? And of course, nobody ever responded. So after about 20 minutes or so of looking on the property, he went in and called the sheriff's office. And of course, the sheriff's office sent detectives and deputies out to the scene right away. And they sat down with Kevin Neal and asked him some questions. He indicated that his wife Sue was getting ready to leave for work at 7:30 that morning, and Kevin and one of the children, India, walked Sue out to her car, which was parked outside the house. They didn't have a garage per se, so they just parked in on their driveway, and said goodbye. And then once Sue pulled away to go to her job, Kevin said that he and India went back inside. India went into the master bedroom and laid down. She was tired, and Cody was still sleeping. And so Kevin said he started doing some housework, was busy in the kitchen area, and around 10 o'clock, both children woke up. They came into the kitchen. He fed them some breakfast cereal and got them dressed and made them go outside and play. They had a swing set in the front yard, and that's where Kevin said that they spent a lot of their time. The children spent a lot of their time in that, and one of the things that was interesting was that Kevin said that he helped put Cody's shoes on, which were a pair of black and white Everlast gym shoes. And he had to tie them for Cody because Cody didn't know how to tie his shoes. And so he went through with the investigators, with the deputies, exactly what he did and how he got him out, what the children were wearing that morning. And again, he sent them outside to play. As I said, he kept checking on them. And then at 1:30, he noticed that they were gone. So they happened to notice when they pulled up that Kevin was sitting on the steps. He had been smoking a cigarette, and he had his hands over his face, and he was sobbing. Okay, but he wasn't real convincing that he was sobbing. It was like he had his hands, fingers apart, and he was looking to see if the deputies were buying the fact that he was upset.
Kind of like the fake cry my kids use. Like, oh, I hurt myself. Are you responding?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
The good visual here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I noted that. I mean, people react differently during, emergencies or, stressful situations. So they didn't particularly pay too much attention to it, but that was just one thing that they noted. And so they went back through Kevin's story again about what the children had on, what his story was, and they noticed that he just seemed to be disengaged. He didn't seem to be emotional about it. He just, it was like he appeared to be insincere. So that was another thing that they noticed. So that was on Wednesday. Of course, everybody in the area starts looking for the children. The media was contacted, and hundreds of people were out searching their property and looking all over for India and Cody. Nobody reported seeing anything suspicious, anyone suspicious in that. So we really went for a day and a half without having any sightings of the children at all, or any information of significance coming in. And then on Friday, July 11th, the Cincinnati division operator was contacted, the FBI, and this was Urbana. Champaign County is actually in Dayton's territory. We have an RA, a resident agency that covers this area. And yet, because I was the Crimes Against Children coordinator in Columbus and had experience working kidnapping cases, they contacted me and asked me to go out to the scene and help coordinate the investigation for the FBI. So on Friday, like I said, I went out, met some of the detectives and some of the other officers. We had people from BCI, Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation. We had people from the Dayton Police Department. We had people from the Attorney General's office, all there to provide assistance to the sheriff's office. And that's where I met Sheriff Dave Deskins, the sheriff of Champaign County. And, it was kind of funny. Dave and I would become close friends, and we were pretty much joined at the hip throughout this entire investigation. He was about 5'9" on his tiptoes. And, of course, he'd wear his professional sheriff's uniform. And, I was dressed, I'm 6'4", and I would wear a golf shirt and a blue jeans, something comfortable, because I knew I'd be out in the rural area. And
what happened to the suit? What happened to the suit, Harry? You're the suit.
Thank God we have we have opportunities to dress it out a little bit. You know, you don't want to be out stomping around through the weeds and that in your good, your good suit.
Any place with a silo is not going to be kind to your best suit.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. And so it was funny. Here I am, 6'4", Dave's around 5'9". He looks professional. I look like, anything but professional, anything but an FBI agent. And anyway, like I said, we became good friends over the course of the investigation. And to this day, I continue to call him my little brother. And he calls me his big brother. So anyway, pretty good relationship with him. But that was my role, was to stay with him and help direct the investigation and that. Dave and I went out, and again, when I say Dave, it's the sheriff, but it's easier for me to remember Dave.
He's your little brother now.
Yeah, he's my little brother. So we went out to the house that Friday when I became involved, and we talked to them both, went over their stories again. Of course, Sue was at work, so she was completely eliminated for the most part as far as being involved in the disappearance of the children. It was Kevin that was there with the children by himself. And, one of the things that we had learned was that Kevin actually had a criminal record, and he had been in an Indiana prison for rape, raping a woman back in 1983. And he had a current criminal complaint against him for confinement and sexual battery of another woman in Indianapolis in 83 after he got out of prison. And so he was, kind of a bad guy.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How is he able to travel? If he has like a current complaint out against him in Indiana, it was still okay to live in Ohio?
Yes. Apparently that was not an issue with the court. He was out on bond, actually.
Okay.
For it, and hadn't faced his, the trial yet. So as long as he had put up his bond and that, I guess he was allowed to travel. And of course, he had met Sue. They settled down in Ohio, but Kevin was still maintaining contact with the court in Marion County, Indiana. So, I guess he was not breaking any travel restrictions or anything like that. So anyway, Kevin was about 6'1", 225. So kind of a big guy. It's also important to point out that, again, Kevin was the stepdad. India had one father, and Cody had another father. The only common factor was that Sue was the mother of both children. We talked to some of the neighbors and, obviously trying to do a canvass of the neighborhood to see if anybody saw anything in that. And a lot of the neighbors would say, we hear Kevin and Sue, the mom, arguing all the time, yelling at each other and that. But this particular day, we didn't hear anything. We often hear the children out playing. We didn't hear anything this particular day that they disappeared and that. So, that again set up some red flags.
Alarm bells kind of going off in your head.
Absolutely. And, there were reports, I guess, that Kevin and Sue would frequently argue and accuse each other of having affairs. And I mean, it was just a bad family situation. The children happened to be innocent participants in this family. But Dave and I, after we had visited with Sue and Steve out at their house, we were on our way back to the sheriff's office, and we talked about what our next steps would be. And and I may have mentioned this before in another podcast, but you really have to open a kind of a two-pronged investigation. And one of the prongs is you have to eliminate the family, the people closest to the kidnapped victims, um, first, because you want to make sure that there was no parental involvement. And sometimes when we talk about interviewing and polygraphing the parents, some people get upset with that, thinking that why are we wasting time on the parents? Why aren't you out there looking for the real bad guys? And unfortunately, the truth is that parents do kill their own children. We have many instances where a parent has lost control or hurt a child so badly that they end up dying, and now the parent is so concerned and scared about what might happen that they come up with a story like a kidnapping to try to cover the fact that they killed their own child. So we've had claims of kidnapping before, when in reality the parent panics, tries to hide the child's body, and then we eventually find out what happened, and it found out that the parent was responsible for the death of the child. So, you have to have one of the prongs for investigation is you have to eliminate the family. The second one is you focus your attention outside as well. Anybody that might have been involved in cruising the area, maybe looking for a victim, known child molesters that have already demonstrated their willingness to commit crimes against children. Those are the kind of people that we want to interview next and eliminate them as well. And so you've got really this two-pronged investigation going on at the same time. And the sooner you can eliminate the parents and the caregivers, the sooner you can focus 100% of your attention out on somebody outside the family that's responsible. So,
and with a family where you have two biological parents, two biological fathers, and one stepfather, that kind of widens that circle a little bit, because biological parents have been known to abduct their children from their mother or caregiver, right? So a legitimate abduction could have been carried out by one of those biological parents. Like I say, it's just you have to widen your circle.
Absolutely. And again, Sue had been married twice before she married Kevin, and as I mentioned, she had a child with each of her former husbands, and those husbands realize what kind of a situation that the children are living in, and they may just decide that they've got to get them out of that situation. So they take steps and take the children themselves to just get them out of the family situation that they're in. And so, yeah, absolutely. You now, not only do you have Kevin and Sue, but we have to interview the two stepdads as well and see if they had any involvement. So
the two biological fathers, right?
Right, exactly.
Just check. Yeah. Kevin's the stepdad. No, yeah, we've got a lot of parents involved in these kids' lives. So it's hard for all of us to follow along, but Sue is the mother, Kevin is the stepfather, and we have two biological fathers, exactly. One to India and one to Cody. Okay.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Sorry.
My ducks in a row. No, there's a lot of people involved, and it's okay to stop and clarify for all of our listeners.
You need a scorecard to keep.
I might. Or as the former English teacher in me, they had a list of characters for all my students. I might need a list, just who's connected to who and how they're connected.
Absolutely. So yeah, two biological fathers, one stepdad, and the the real mom, if you will,
Yeah.
the sole mom of the two children. So, oy vey. But so we're working this together, and everybody, is kind of following their assignments and that. And I remember Dave and I went back to the Sue and Kevin's house one night to ask some follow-up questions. And while we were there, when you talk about kind of funny things that happen, even though it's a serious case, I remember Dave and I were standing out in the driveway, and this older gentleman drove up in a car, and he had about 4 to 5 beagles in the car, and they're barking and howling, and Dave goes over. We go over to the guy, and he says, basically, these dogs are well trained, and they'll find those kids. And
Okay.
Dave says, "Well, we've already had search dogs and everything here, but you're welcome to give it a try if you want." And he's going on. He said, "These dogs are well trained. They'll find them." So we said, "Go ahead, knock yourself out." And so he opens up the back door to let the dogs out, and these freaking dogs are howling, barking. They take off immediately for the woods,
no.
which 100 yards away. The man is yelling at them, "Come back, get back here." And they're not paying any attention. They're gone. And
I can just hear like I can't do a beagle impression, guys. I don't have a dog, but I will try. Wait, here, yours might be better. Probably better.
I had 2 beagle dogs, Daisy and Duffy, so I know.
Okay, wait, do it again. I feel like I need to hear it in my head. All right, so that's what's running through the woods of this house.
Their takeoffs, and Dave and I just stood there. The man's running after the dogs. Dave and I are just sitting there like laughing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, bless his heart. He wanted to come and help, but clearly the dogs weren't as well trained as he.
You were not ready for this type of investigation.
Because I don't know that the dogs ever came back. To be honest with you, they may still be out there running. But anyway,
you have to find these lighthearted moments when you can, because cases like this are so very heavy.
It is. I had mentioned this maybe in another podcast or two, but some of these cases are so dreadful and awful. Because you have children yourself, and just to imagine that your children have been taken, or you can't find them. I mean, it's heartbreaking, and so law enforcement officers tend to have something that relieves the stress a little bit. So when something funny happens, you recognize it for being what it is, a funny situation, but that doesn't take away from your, dedication and seriousness in working the case. But you have to take some of these little light moments, and it helps relieve the stress in that, I think, that you feel. So that was certainly one of those things. And then on July 14th, we had a meeting. Now, keep in mind that the investigators that we had, the deputies and the investigators from, the sheriff's office, BCI, the Dayton Homicide Squad, all got together for a meeting to discuss what their investigation to date had revealed. So we got everybody in one room so we can each hear what the other person did, and that way we can see if it ties in with anything that we happen to hear or learn in our investigation. So we found out that Kevin and Sue did not own the property that they were at. They were renting it from a farmer that happened to have several different properties. We looked at Sue and Kevin's telephone records and saw that they made several phone calls and that, or Kevin made several phone calls to relatives and that. And when we talked to some of those relatives, they told the investigator that Kevin had talked about him being in a, deep pile of shit, and that he was thinking of ending his life. And he said nobody believed him, his story. And, one investigator indicated that they interviewed a witness who drove by the residence around noontime, and remember the children were supposed to be outside playing until about 1:30. That's when Kevin checked and noticed that they were gone. This witness saw Kevin sitting on the porch smoking a cigarette, and that the children were nowhere to be seen.
And their swing set is in the front, so they would have very closely and easily seen them.
That's right. And so here we have a witness indicating that, in fact, they never did see the children at noontime thereabouts when they were supposedly out there playing. The investigator had talked to two farmhands that came by the residence where Sue and Kevin were living. And they said they were there around 1:00, and there was no indication, no sign of the children at all. Matter of fact, no sign of Kevin. And there's usually a maroon-colored Pontiac Bonneville that sits in the yard. Supposedly, it's not drivable, but that vehicle was gone. And so they noted that. They thought that was unusual. And they were told at one point that the Bonneville didn't have any brakes, and so that's why it was sitting in the yard until they were able to get fixed. But that had not occurred as of yet. So they also indicated that they thought they saw a small blue hatchback car parked in the driveway, and they didn't know who that vehicle belonged to. So that was another mystery now that we had, was where did the maroon Pontiac go? Why wasn't it there when it was supposedly inoperable? And then, who owned this blue hatchback car that the farmhands allegedly saw? So that was another thing that was discussed. Another detective that went to the house on the day the children were, that Kevin called and indicated that the children were missing, was there interviewing Kevin. Sue was at work at the time, and then all of a sudden she shows up in her car, and she's pounding on the steering wheel, and she's yelling. She's now in the driveway, and she's yelling at Kevin, what the fuck did you do with my children? And so she's yelling, screaming at him about, him doing something to the children. And she was trying to get out of the car, and the deputy that was there knew or realized that there was going to be a fight, a physical confrontation. So this deputy tried to keep Sue in the car, and she just kept yelling, what the fuck did you do with my kids? And so, it's clear to that detective that was there, that deputy, that Sue had her own suspicions that maybe Kevin was involved. Another investigator indicated that who happened to be a relative of Kevin's told the investigator that Kevin called around 7:20 the next night, 7:20 p.m., and said that the kids were missing and that he was in deep shit. I think I mentioned that before. but this is brought up in that meeting that I'm telling you that we had. We had done a very extensive neighborhood canvass to see if anybody saw anything suspicious, any suspicious people. Did you see the children or hear them out playing? Did Kevin come to your door asking if, they saw his, the children? And we didn't have a single neighbor that said that they heard Kevin yelling or looking for his children. He didn't come to any of the doors of their homes. Never asked if anybody saw anything in that. So that was another thing of interest that we noted.
It feels like a giant puzzle. Like I imagine all of you in this room, and you have all these pieces that you see, but you can't connect any of them together.
And a lot of this stuff comes from experience and training. This is not just random, what do we do now situations. This is, these are techniques and procedures that have been proven to work in previous cases. And that's the advantage of having experience in the training. Is when you have this case, you know what to do, several different steps to take. Any of us would simply stare into space and not know what our next move would be. So it's interesting to see these various law enforcement agencies work together while also knowing kind of each step that they should take.
Yeah, you're both right. It is a puzzle, and when you have multiple investigators conducting investigation, following up leads, and until you get everybody together, you really don't know the results of what the other detectives or investigators have come up with. And that's why we get everybody together and we go through exactly what each one of the investigators had been doing so that they can share their information that they came up with, and what Jessica maybe found in her interview or her part of the investigation may fill in a piece of the puzzle to a part of the investigation that I was conducting, or something that Clark found out may relate to something that both Jessica and I found out. So it's important that we get everybody together and we share that information so that everybody's on the same page and knows exactly where we are and what the other has found out. And it is, you're filling in the pieces of the puzzle, and to the point where at some point you have so many pieces of the puzzle filled in that the picture of what happened actually becomes clear. And so that's what we're trying to do when we have these get-togethers and to discuss the case. So we came up with another list of things that we needed to do. We needed to conduct a more detailed neighborhood canvass again to see if there was anything that was missed the first time around. Sometimes when you do a neighborhood canvass, not everybody may be home. Somebody may be at work. So now we need to go back if we missed a house and talk to those people at a different time to see if they saw anything. So again, continuing on with a detailed neighborhood and canvass is important. We wanted to make sure that we treated the house and the different outbuildings and that as possible crime scenes. And so we brought in BCI to come in and conduct crime scene investigations as though a crime could have happened at each of these places, and to actually look for any evidence to indicate that something may have happened to the children in these different locations. So now, again, treat these different things as possible crime scene locations. Third, one of the things I was going to do was contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They are excellent at helping on missing children cases. one of the things I was looking for is I wanted to get the National Center to produce some posters for us to put up around town. And they're very good at, if you provide a couple of pictures, if you're missing children and the information, they'll put together a poster for you, and they'll Federal Express a large quantity of posters to you so that you can spread them out throughout town and in different locations, and that to advertise the fact that these children are missing, and anybody with any information, contact the sheriff's office. Wanted to do a more thorough review of Kevin and Sue's telephone records. We had done a preliminary check on that, but we needed to do more work on that to see if there was any other people that we needed to talk to. And in fact, we did find several out in Indiana that we needed to go out and talk to. So again, a more detailed and thorough exam of the phone records was important. I mentioned before, interview known child molesters. Again, they've already demonstrated their willingness to commit crimes against children, to make sure that we didn't have, one of those individuals come by and scoop up the children, and they're holding them, or they may have harmed the children. So we got to make sure that we interview that. We wanted to talk about the best way to deal with the media, how to use the media to our benefit. And I had experience in media relations, and I had taken a training from the FBI when I was involved in some of the media courses and that. And I talked to Dave about how we needed to make sure that we had set times for media briefings. We wanted to set one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We'd hold them at the sheriff's office. We needed one spokesperson. We didn't want, first of all, other investigators that are involved in the investigation contacted by the media. That would take them away from their work. And then second of all, you don't want to risk information getting out there that may be contradictory to what you want to say, or what Clark says may not jive with what Jessica says, and now we look like buffoons because we're saying two different things in that. So
and you always hold information back, right? Too. Right. That's also something that's important to remember, and make sure that you're all on the same page about that.
Right. It's much easier to control what's being said if you have one person and one person only giving the press briefings. And again, you're right, Jessica. We don't put everything out there because we, believe it or not, we've had people that want to take credit for cases that they had nothing to do with. They'll indicate that they took the kids. And if we put everything out there that we know, for example, then there's no way for us to differentiate between what's been said in public already and what the real person responsible tells us. So, yeah, we hold back information on the case, not a lot, but just enough, just in case, if there is somebody that's claiming, that they were involved and yet they don't know the pertinent details, we'll know that they're not, telling us the truth, and we should not particularly pay attention to a lot of what they're saying. So it's important that we hold some of that information back for the good of the investigation.
Hey, Clark, were you ever at this news briefings for this case? You and Harry have kind of circled each other a lot.
I mean, we have, and I was working in the area, but I did not have the time to go to these news briefings based on my work schedule and the amount of time that I had to report on the story. So I was watching it from a distance, but these were not briefings that I attended in person.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Clark may have been the only one that wasn't there because as in in most missing children cases, the media comes out of the woodwork, and I mean there were vans, news vans, satellite trucks, motor homes, all kinds of things lined up and down the street in front of Kevin and Sue's residence, and all looking for, the latest information, hoping to grab an interview with somebody if they saw him out. Again, they wanted to be the first ones to be able to report it. And, so the media interest was absolutely incredible. And again, all over the state of Ohio, they were there. So it was good that we had the set times for the press briefings, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, so that the media folks knew that the only information that was going to be released was going to be at those press conferences. And if they wanted the information, they better be there and they better be on time, because we would start the press briefings at exactly, if it was at 10 o'clock, we'd start at exactly 10 o'clock. And if you weren't there because you maybe had breakfast too long or whatever, you were going to miss out. So people knew they better be there for the press briefings and that. So, it was, I think we did a good job with the media. The media, in my opinion, can be your friend. We've talked about this in some other episodes. But the media is the means to get the information out. And you have to control the beast, or the beast will control you. And, so you give the media what you want out. They in turn send it out to, the citizens in the area. And it's a, necessary, I don't want to say evil in working with the media, because I don't feel that way. But, people want to know what's going on, and it's important that your citizens have confidence in you as the law enforcement agency to be able to handle this kind of a case, and that you're doing everything possible. They need to hear what you're doing in that. So giving them the information, giving the citizens the information so that they can judge for themselves how much you're doing, and, make sure that you're doing all the logical things. I think that's really important. And it gives people in your community a real sense of, calmness, if you will, that, they're doing everything they can, and they're going to find these kids one way or the other. So,
and it's not to interrupt for too long, but from the point of view of the media, Harry's right to call them, we are a bit of a beast in our hunger for information, because we're trying to do the same thing, keep the public informed. And these regular briefings and these spokespeople who are, designated, do not stop the media, don't prevent the media from going out and talking to neighbors or members of the community and getting information on their own. But those briefings are the source of official information, information you can tell the public is on the record and official. And that's very comforting, because the media is a lot like those eagles. You turn us loose and we're going to go running into the woods, never see us again. And you don't know what we're going to find out. And we, the media are a great source of, what mystery writers call rodeo clowns. That's a piece of information that might send an investigator or the public off in the wrong direction for a second, take their attention away from the main job. So even though it may sound like, the authorities are trying to control the media in a bad way, there is a reason behind that. And we members of the media do not resent the fact that news conferences are scheduled and spokespersons are designated. But it doesn't keep us from being, free press. but it does give us regular access to information we feel is, verifiable, and information we can give to the public with the confidence that it's coming from a reliable source.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good perspective, particularly since you were with the media for so many years. It's, again, it's you want accurate information to get out, and the only way you can do that is to have an official spokesperson, and you don't want the media developing sources that may or may not have the accurate information. So if you are the only source of information, and you hold your investigators and other people associated with the case to not saying anything, and that the only person that says anything is going to be Dave, the sheriff, at the press conferences, it really takes a burden off of a lot of different people. And again, if you're in the media, if you got one person, one media station or whatever that's getting some information that's different or more than what it is being released in the press conferences, that's not a good thing either, because then it creates a real lack of trust, I guess, if you will, that all the information's coming out during these press conferences, and so if one station or one media outlet is getting more information than the rest, that's just not fair to the rest of them. So it can really cause some bad blood in that, and we didn't want to create that at all. We wanted everybody to have the same information, the true information, at the same time.
And Dave was a great spokesman, right? So, the sheriff there in Champaign County did a great job of it.
Dave was very calm. Again, I'm sure you've seen some of these press conferences where there's all these cameras around, there's people with microphones, and just everybody trying to angle their way in to get the best information and the best pictures. And that Dave was able to stay calm. He talked to people in such a manner that it was like he was your friend telling you something. And I had multiple media folks tell me how impressed they were with Dave and his calm nature in getting out the information and that. And they said it's like you're hearing it from a family member or a friend. And so that's a real positive to have somebody that's able to under all that pressure to be able to go up there and release consistent information, true and accurate information. So, I give Dave a lot of credit on that. He was wonderful in that.
And in the meantime, the investigation is going on. You guys are, running down leads and checking out sources. How are things progressing now? It's been several days since India and Cody went missing.
Yeah, it's again, like you said, everything's going on, continues on, and we had decided that we wanted to make sure that we polygraph both Kevin and Sue to make sure that they were being truthful and honest. We also wanted to polygraph the two biological fathers of both India and Cody and make sure that they were being honest with us when they say they had nothing to do with the disappearance of the children. And so BCI was able to have their polygraph examiner eliminate both biological fathers. There was no question that they were telling the truth, that they weren't involved. However, when he polygraphed Sue and Kevin, the results came back as inconclusive. That doesn't mean that they're, lying. It just means that there's something going on that doesn't allow the polygraph examiner to say whether they're being truthful or they're not telling the truth. It's somewhere in between. And it could be explainable, like, for example, a lot of stress. Maybe the way the questions were worded, caused somebody to be, to answer in such a way that it didn't give you the indication whether they were being truthful or not truthful. And so we decided that we would go ahead and bring in the FBI polygrapher, and they would polygraph both Sue and Steve to see what they came up with. And so we brought down the polygrapher from the Cleveland division and sat down with Sue first and went through the questioning and everything, and the polygrapher came out and said, "Hey, I believe Sue is telling the truth. There's no indication of that she's being deceptive at all." And so we let Sue go ahead and head home, and we basically cleared her through polygraph examination, even though, again, we had no reason to believe that she was involved in the first place. But it was comforting to know, to have the opinion of the polygraph examiner. Then it was Kevin's turn, and he sat down with with Kevin and administered the polygraph examination. And at one point, the polygraph examiner came out, told Dave and I, he said, "Yeah, Kevin is being deceptive. He's not truthful." And so he went back in. One of the things that polygraph examiners are really good at is they can point out how the answers that somebody has given have registered as not being truthful, and they can use that to show the individual that's being polygraphed and say, "Hey, I know basically you're lying to me. So, you need to come clean and let's clean this up, and tell me the truth." And polygraph examiner went back in with Kevin and told him that, and Kevin decided he'd had enough, and he gets up, leaves the room, runs to his car, and drives away. And the polygraph examiner came out and he said, I did everything I could, but he won't sit down. He's being not being truthful at all. And there's a lot of things there that he's just not telling us. So now we had comments that Kevin had made to family members that, he was in a world of problems, and that he was thinking of killing himself. And now he's failed the polygraph examination. So,
and you have Sue already casting doubt from that first day. Absolutely. And you have neighbors punching holes in his story. So it looks like you're starting to put part of this puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's becoming clearer and clearer that Kevin has something to do with the disappearance of the children. So you're right. It's that part of the puzzle as far as who we should be looking at and who most likely had some responsibility, if not complete responsibility, would be Kevin. And so we were on the right track, we believe.
In part two of this look at this case, the disappearance of India and Cody Smith from Champaign County, Ohio in 1997. Jessie, how can we find out the second part of this episode so folks can keep listening right away?
So the second part will be released next week. So make sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, subscribe on YouTube or on any of your podcast platforms, and we'll release the next episode next week.
And we'll see how many more of these puzzle pieces fall into place and how things get very tight for the suspect in the disappearance of India and Cody. Retired FBI agent Harry Trombitas, Jessica Hemmelgarn, I'm Clark Donley, and we'll see you next week for part 2.
Off the Record, an FBI agent's perspective is created and hosted by Clark Donley, Harry Trombitas, and Jessie Hemmelgarn. Produced by Jessie Hemmelgarn. Stories in this podcast are inspired by Harry Trombitas' autobiography, Dark Places, about his time in the FBI. Music is called Cruise in the Back and is available on Storyblocks. You can find this podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, and on our website.